Hey everybody, welcome back to the Crafting Brothers. This week is part 2 of our 3D printed versus handcrafted challenge. So to rewind a little bit, if you recall, I found out that Greg was printing a Wizard's Keep on his 3D printer, and he was on like day 7. So I kind of laughed at that because if you look at some of our older videos, you'll see that I was accused of cheating when I used my 3D printer to print some of the detail pieces on my projects. So I thought that was kind of funny. Here's the deal. My philosophy on this is what I think most people would agree with, that using a 3D printer to just print some of the smaller details on a project is a smart way to use your printer. I love to build stuff, whether it's wood, foam, clay, plaster, whatever. It doesn't matter. You just won't find me using my printer to print out an entire project. I just don't want to do that. To be clear, I don't have anything against printing entire structures. If you have the time to do it and you have enough filament, then nothing wrong with that. Send me your comments. Let me know what you think. And meanwhile, it is part 2 of our challenge. It's my Wizard's Keep handcrafted. So here's an image of the Wizard's Keep that I'm going to model mine after, and I'm going to try and replicate this as best I can. So to get started on the project here, I figured a good height would be 8 inches high by 6 inches wide. So I'm going to cut this out of 1-inch XPS foam. Then using my hot wire cutting table, I'm going to slice this piece in half. Now, when I was doing that, this happened. That definitely caught me off guard. So I turned down the temperature and replaced the cutting wire and proceeded to cut a 45-degree angle on all 4 pieces of the main structure. Next, I'm cutting some 1/8 inch strips, which I'll use for the stairway entrance. I decided to use this soldering iron and tinfoil technique on this entire structure. I've found that you get the best results using this method. For the sides of the staircase, I decided to use some of my pre-textured bricks. I just bought this handheld wire cutter and decided to cut the stone patterns using this attachment. So here I've decided to go down the road of using this same handheld cutter to create the brick pattern on the main structure. After melting the texture in the foam with the soldering iron, I proceeded to cut the brick pattern in with the handheld cutter. Now, as I was doing this, I was questioning whether this method was going to work or not. Sure enough, I decided to abandon this technique and go down a completely different path. That's right, I'm going to cut bricks for the entire structure using 3 different brick sizes. This is going to take a lot more time, but I think it's going to pay off. Next, I'm going to create the main entrance for the Wizard's Keep using 1/2-inch XPS foam. Here I'm going to be using my X-Acto knife and ballpoint pen technique to draw in the brick lines. Okay, so I've cut out 3 different size pieces for the top of the roof here, and we're trying to make a little like molding detail. So by assembling these 3 pieces like this, we're creating like a molding effect on the top here. So I've got 6 3/4, 6 1/2, and then 7. And so I'm going to take the paper off all these and sand down the edges and glue them all together, and that will be the top. Before I glue them together, I'm going to give each edge here just a little bit of a round. And we're also going to texture these because we want them to look like stone. Okay, so I just glued these 3 pieces together, and you can see how that gives the molding detail around the outside. Next, I'm ready to start building the top structure of the Wizard's Keep, and this is going to be all done with 1/2" XPS foam. The technique I like to use for creating the roof shingles is to thinly slice some XPS foam strips and then use the hot wire cutter to create the shingle pattern. After that, I'll use a wood grain roller for the texture. Back to the main structure now. I need to create a rock wall around the top of the building, so here I'm using 3/4" XPS strips. Now I'm going to work on the window or bastion structure on the front of the Wizard's Keep. I'm going to just hand carve this using my Olfa blade and some sandpaper. I'm going to replicate the molding portion for the top using Dollar Tree foam. Again, I need to just sand the edges round and then texture it with my tinfoil ball. I cut out this curved piece of foam to complete the rock wall detail on top of the building. To finish the rock detail on the top, I used my X-Acto knife and ballpoint pen. Now I'm ready to build the dome structure that goes on the very top of the Wizard's Keep. After cutting the dome to fit, I'm just using some stucco patch here to cement this onto the roof. After that, I found a few wood pieces that I'll dip in grout and glue to the top of the dome. So here's where my 3D printing philosophy kicks in. I decided that it was too time consuming for me to carve all these small rounded brick columns and the front door. So I decided to put my printer to work while I continue building other structures. Okay, I need to make some rocks for the perimeter of my castle structure here. I have a few that I've already made, but I need more. I'm going to mix up some plaster, pour it in my molds. Okay, so I've got to figure out a place to put these rocks, and I think what I want to do is go around the outside like this. So I'm going to need to cut off some corners here, and we'll do that right now. Working with these plaster casted rocks is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but with a little patience, you can use a cutter and a knife to get these to fit together nicely. We're also going to be using a homemade Sculptamold, which will fill all of the little cracks between the rocks and the crevices. As you can see, I got a little far ahead of myself and I cut this section right here, which kind of ruins this entryway, but I will fix it. I should be able to fix that. Just get a couple of rocks here to patch up this area, and then I should be able to slop some stuff in there to fix that up. To do that, I mixed up some homemade Sculptamold here with toilet paper, 1-ply, plaster of Paris, and water, and just mashed it all up until it was the consistency of oatmeal. I also found that this barbecue skewer works as a perfect tool to get the Sculptamold in the cracks. Next, I just replicated the same stone pattern that I used on the roof. Painting these plaster rocks is a bit tricky, but I found a few techniques that work here. First, you want to water down your paints until it has the pigment of a heavy wash. For this paint scheme, I'm starting with a watered down pewter gray, then a light brown, followed by a golden yellow. The plaster really soaks up the liquid, so you don't want to use paint straight out of the bottle here. I'm going to create some depth in the cracks and crevices of the rocks by applying my black wash with a small paintbrush. Next, a dry brush with granite gray will bring out the surface texture on the rocks. After the base and main building have been prepped with Mod Podge and black paint, I'm going to give them a coat of pewter gray. I didn't have to make my windows from scratch only because I've had these pre-made silicone molds that I use to make these windows. The paint scheme though is going to be a base coat of tan and then a dry brush with white and then a brown wash to finish them off. My 3D printed door is going to need some fine detail painting, first with golden brown for the wood portion, then metallic bronze and gunmetal to finish the detail on the front of the door. The wood shingle roof is going to be painted with a golden brown, and then I'll go over that with a burnt sienna acrylic ink. I decided to apply a super light dry brush of white on the rocks to bring out the edges. Next, I'm going to finish the wood detail on the door with brown acrylic ink. I'm also going to apply 2 coats on the frame here to give it a darker look. The roof is also going to get 2 coats of this Liquitex brown ink. Okay, now I'm in the home stretch, so enough talking. Let's take in this inspiring musical montage. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and make sure you tune in next Friday for part 3 of our handcrafted versus 3D printed challenge. We'll see if Greg's 3D printer is done by then.